Hi, this is Mark from Stick and Rudder Studios, and this is part 3 of the 3-part tutorials. And this is basically around the upgrade from XCamera 1.1 to XCamera 2.0. In XCamera 2.0 we've added just a ton of new features. So what I'd like to try to do in this tutorial is take you through the highlights of some of the major ones that we've added. The assumption here is that you have watched tutorial part 1 of XCamera 1.1 and tutorial part 2, which is the more advanced camera features. We're going to be building on all those features with all the new things that we've added to 2.0. So I think let's start going through some of the 2.0 features. So one of the major things that I wanted to take care of in 2.0 is develop the concept of an external camera. You may recall, some of you with XCamera 1.1, that certain aircraft, that if you placed the camera outside of the cockpit, you'd end up with some rendering problems. And let me see if I can actually show that to you here. I'm in the Flight Factor 777, and this is one of the aircraft that used to have this problem, okay, with XCamera 1.1. If I were to go to an external view, and let me just bring up the control panel here really quick, and I'm going to shut off an external camera so that we're kind of looking at it the way it looked in 1.1. You could see that it wouldn't render the cockpit properly, or basically the fuselage properly. And I think the guys at Flight Factor, what they're trying to do is really do some trickery with improving their frame rates by figuring out whether it was a 3D cockpit view or in some kind of an external view in X-plane, so that it could cut down on what they did or did not need to render. So with XCamera, we basically developed this external view concept, which gets around that problem. So if you mark a camera as external, it will literally not use the 3D cockpit view in X-plane. It will use effectively the free camera view. In that case, the planes like the Flight Factor and a few other ones, they'll actually render properly. And you might actually be able to notice a difference in the sound too, with the camera really being a true external camera. The aircraft models know how to render the sound properly, so you'll get a much louder engine sound if it's an external camera placed outside the plane, as opposed to a internal 3D cockpit camera. So that's kind of one thing that we wanted to show you. Another thing that I'd like to show you here, if I can go back to an internal view, is this thing that we created called the mini control panel. And it is something that if you put your mouse down in the lower bottom part of the screen, this little mini control panel will pop up, and you could very quickly select different cameras within a category, or you could quickly come in and you could select a different category. Like here, I picked the external views. I can look at the tail, the right stabilizer, nose. I could basically move around to any of the different things I need here. Now this mini control panel, you can disable it. If you go up into the XCamera settings dialog, there is a auto show mini control panel feature here that you can shut off. And if I do that, what will end up happening is when I put the mouse down at the bottom here, it won't do that. So I'm going to turn that back on, because I find it pretty useful. Some people might find that it's problematic, but I'm going to turn it back on again here for my purposes. Okay. Let's see, what else do we want to show you? I think one of the other things that we've added is the ability to ship XCamera with community aircraft files. And the concept here is, as our users develop aircraft, they can submit them on stickandrudderstudios.com, the community file section. And then what I'll periodically do is I'll collect those aircraft camera files, and I'll package them up into the distribution. So, if you're trying to set up a new plane, you might actually have something that was already set up for you as a starting point. And let me show you that. Let me just come over here really quickly. What I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to, let's say, the Cirrus jet plane. And this is the standard default X-plane view. I don't have a camera definition file for this plane yet. So what I'm going to do is come up into XCamera, and what I'm going to do is enable it. And you'll notice that what XCamera figured out is there's no camera file, so it's going to tell you, okay, that it created a basic one, and that what you're going to want to do is go set up all of your cameras. Now, you could do this manually, just like I showed you how to do in tutorial part 1 and part 2, or the new thing you could do is you can let me just bring up the control panel here. There's a new button here called Browse Community Files, and what this will do is look around and see if you can find one of the community files in the XCamera directory. And you'll see that right here I've actually created one for the Cirrus the Jet C4, and we can just load this. And once it's loaded, now you've basically got all the camera definitions set up, right? Copilot seat, cockpits, that type of thing. So we don't have all of the planes done yet. I'll keep working on them, adding them. Hopefully other users will come in and add some more planes. But even if you don't have one, sometimes you can pick something that's kind of close. Now do keep in mind that usually with the cockpit cameras, even if you do have a plane that's close, you're going to have to move them all around and set them up. But often the external views are pretty close. Like if you take any of the Coronado prop planes, amazingly they're not that big in difference in size externally. So often those external cameras will work perfectly fine from one plane to the other. So that's one thing I want to show you, is the ability to come in and do that. Another thing, a really cool feature that we created is this thing called Bezier curves. So if you recall any of the transitions that you wanted to do in the past, you had to create all these different cameras, and to get it to be really smooth, often you had to have multiple cameras within the transition. We've come up with this thing called a Bezier transition, and with a Bezier transition, all you really need is 3 cameras. You can have more, but at least with a minimum of 3 or 4 cameras, you can get an ultra smooth transition between those. And I think I can show that to you here in the external inspection. Let me just get to that animation here. So we have an external inspection animation that we've done, and this one uses Bezier curves. So you can see I've got one camera here, and I marked off enable Bezier curve. Another one here, another one here, and you can see that they kind of go all the way around the plane. Now, what you're going to really look at this when I actually run this is you'll see how smooth this actually looks. Okay, in this situation because of the way the Bezier curves work. Let me get back to the starting point here. And you can kind of see how nice and smooth that whole thing looks, going around the plane. It's kind of an external inspection. So with Bezier curves, you don't need a lot of cameras, but you can get an actually ultra smooth transition between all those cameras because of the mathematics behind the Bezier curve and how it actually operates. Okay, so let's see, what else can we take a look at here? Another really cool feature that we've added is this concept of airport cameras. Now this is built off of, once we did the external camera, we were also able to do a free camera, which is effectively an external camera that is not attached to the plane. You can place these external cameras pretty much anywhere in the world you want. So with these kind of external free cameras, we built upon that and created the concept of airport cameras. And right now I'm at Juneau, Alaska, one of my favorite airports here, and I'm actually going to create an airport camera file for this. So the way you do this is you bring up the XCamera, you come up here with this little checkbox, and by the way, there's a command that you can map a joystick button to if you wanted to do this, but I'm going to turn this on, and by default the first thing it's going to do is it's going to create one camera. It just happens to put it at the center of gravity of the plane, but I could move this camera around if I wanted to, kind of get it outside the plane, move it around any place I wanted to at the airport. But that would be very tedious. frankly, setting up airport cameras all over the airport. So what we've got is a feature here where it will actually go in, and you can generate the airport cameras from basically the scenery files. So I'm going to bring this dialog box up here and show you kind of some of the things you need to look at. So for the runways, what you're going to want to be able to determine is at the beginning and end of the runways, how much horizontal and vertical offset do you want, okay, from that runway position. In my case, you might want the camera, off the runway a little bit by so many meters. You might want it so many meters above the runway. Things like starting positions, these are effectively your gates. Same kind of a concept. How far off horizontally from that starting position do you want to be in meters, and how high above would you like to be when we create these cameras? Xplane will also create cameras at each sign, and like, so if you have some of the what I would call basically the intersection signs, the taxiway signs, and here you can specify, if you create a camera over the top of a sign, how many meters above the sign would you like to have that, or how many meters above basically ground level is what this is. And then you got sign camera culling. If in a really busy airport, you could have a bunch of these taxiway signs that are actually very close to one another, and you might not want to create a camera on top of every single one of them. So what this culling is, you could basically say is, I don't want to have cameras on top of signs that are any more than within 5 meters radius of each other. So if it is creating sign cameras, if it sees it's already got one within a 5 meter radius, it won't create one for that particular sign it's looking at the moment. And then you can kind of decide here with the facing starting position cameras, do I want the camera to be facing kind of behind the plane when it's at the starting position, or would I like it to be at the front of the plane? So I'm going to come in here and mark mine as saying I would like that to be forward facing, and then just say go create all the cameras. And what this will do is actually create all of the different cameras for you. So I think I'll just use my mini cockpit here, my mini control panel here. Let's take a look at the starting locations. So you can see here I've got one at the helipad. Here's one at one of the ramps. Here's another ramp. So you can see it created one at every single starting point, within the within the airport. We can come on over here and take a look at what else do we have? Viewpoints. So this particular airport only has the aircraft tower as one of the viewpoints. Take a look at the runways. Here we've got one at runway 8. Here's the other one at the opposite end of the runway. So if you had multiple runways here, you'd have a camera at each end. So once you've created these airport cameras, there's a XCamera command that you can map to a joystick button that will basically toggle between your basically your aircraft view. You can see I'm sitting in the cockpit here, and the nearest camera to where your plane is at right now. So I'm just going to execute that command right now, and you can see that what it did is it selected a camera. It's probably one of the sign cameras. It's actually right near this, where I've got my plane position like this. And as you move down the runway, or if you're flying over the airport, you can simply toggle back and forth like this, and it will actually pick the closest camera, that you've got, right? And you can always, like I said, use the mini control panel if you wanted to go to particular cameras within the spot. So that's really kind of a cool thing that you can use. And with airport cameras, as you are flying, if you've got multiple airport camera files set up, as the plane gets within the bounds of the airport, it'll automatically switch over to the new airport camera file. So, as you're flying from, let's say, Juneau down to Sitka or something like that, as you get close to Sitka, if you start trying to select airport cameras there, it'll automatically select the Sitka airport camera file, assuming that you've created one. Okay, so I think that covers airport cameras. What else do we want to talk about? And we did Bezier curves. Let's talk about automatic generation of some of the animations. Let's go back over here to the plane, and I think what I'm going to do is kind of get the plane up in the air here for a minute. So let's get us onto let's say a final approach here. And I'm just going to pause it real quick here so we can see this. So another feature we've got is this ability to basically create orbits or create flybys. Now, you can do these things completely automatically or manually and set up each camera around the aircraft, do it any way you want. But we've actually algorithmically created something that'll kind of do it for you within the bounds of certain parameters. So if I come in here and I say create orbit, I can come in here and I could say, well, let me call this orbit 2. And you know what you could specify is what the initial camera heading is going to be for the orbit. In other words, where is the camera pointing at the plane? What radius do you want around the plane? I've got this one set up to 10 meters. What is the minimum height that you want the camera to go at as it orbits? What is the maximum height? So here you're going to see I'm going to get about a 6 meter difference as we orbit the full 360 degrees around. And then how many seconds would you like this to last? Okay. And do you want to go you know, kind of clockwise around the plane, or do you want to go counterclockwise? And then you just hit create. And what this will do, it'll come in here and it'll create the actual orbit for you. So I'll just save that. We'll come down here. Here it is. And there's the orbit animation already created. Now you could go in and you could edit these. Edit these if you wanted to and move them around. Again, you can make your own if you want. You've got kind of a similar thing with the flybys. Let's bring up the control panel here. Create flyby. And it's the same kind of thing. I'll call this, let's say, flyby 7. And you can specify what you want that initial camera heading to be. Let's see, I think I'll do one where, let's say it comes up from behind the plane. I think might be an interesting concept, right? So let's see how that works. We'll say the camera angle is 0 degrees, which would basically be coming from behind. What do you want the height to be? How far back is it going to be? CPA, X, and Z and Y, this is basically your closest point of approach. So in order to calculate the trajectory of the camera, when it's nearest to the plane, you know, how close do you want that to be? And that actually becomes a plot point. So I think I've got mine set to here. That's going to be 50 meters off the x-axis, 10 meters below the plane. I think in this case I'm going to make it 10 meters above, right? And then you know, on the y-axis, what do you want that to be too? And then again, you can specify the duration. And you just hit create. Save that. And let's see what that looks like here. So we got flyby 7. And you can see I'm coming up from behind the plane. And there's your flyby. So you can create these manually if you want by simply positioning, you know, 2 different cameras where you want, determining, you know, what kind of a transition rate you want, or you can do it like this where it'll literally do the calculations for you. So I think that gives you a flavor for what you can do with the with some of the automated animation creation capabilities. Another feature that we've added is this concept of system check. So we were actually having quite a few problems with new users where they you know, maybe didn't have like the TrackIR games list updated, or they might have some conflicting plugins installed like Pilot View, or possibly the SimCoder's Headshake plugin was the wrong version. So we tried to create something here called System Check. And what it'll do is go out and it tries to figure out, do you have TrackIR installed? Did it find it? Did it initialize properly? Is XCamera in the games list? Do you need to do a games update? Is Headshake in? Is it the right version? Do you have a conflicting plugin in there like Pilot View? You know, XCamera and Pilot View kind of do the same thing. They're not really going to work well together if you got them both in there. So this is something, if things don't seem to be working right after you initially install XCamera, you can always try the system check, and it'll go out and make sure that you don't have any conflicting plugins or things of that nature. And again, if you guys run into any conflicts with certain plugins, if you let me know, I will try to add that to the system check so that new users don't get confused by things of this nature. Okay, why don't we talk about MouseMove, which is a new capability that we've added that allows you to position the cameras using your mouse. Kind of works very similar to Mouse Look, but in order to make it work, we've actually got to map some commands. And this is one area where I actually would like to show you how to do this. Some people are pretty familiar with this, but I found that a lot of users aren't familiar with how to map keyboard keys or mouse buttons, okay, to plug-in things, or basically to plugins. So the way you do this is you come up into your settings here, and you're either going to want to go to joysticks and equipment configurations. And for the moment, I'm just going to come here and take a look at the button stuff. So let's say, for instance, I were to want to map a particular button. One of the things you'll notice is that let me actually do one here that's not positioned to anything. I just picked a random button on my control panel here, and let's say I want to map this to a particular command within Stick and Rudder Studios. By default, you're going to be looking at the simulator, but up here you've got this little selector box, and what you can do is come down and you can pick either the X-Plane 10 sim commands, or you can pick some of these various plugins. Now, what plugin authors are supposed to do is come up with a prefix. Mine happens to be SRS for Stick and Rudder Studios. Different people have picked different ones. Like if you take a look at Sandy Barbera, this is how he prefixed all of his plugins. So if you want to map a command to anything in XCamera, first thing you have to do is you have to pick SRS, and then you've got to pick XCamera, and then you've got all the different mappings you can do down here. Okay, so to go back to my concept of MouseMove, the mouse in X-Plane is used for a lot of different things. So we need to have a way of telling XCamera that we actually want your mouse movements to do things like move the camera around. So we have some commands that we can map to that. I happen to use a gaming mouse that's got some extra buttons on it that can get mapped to keystrokes, and here's a kind of a little bit of a video of what that thing looks like. But you can also do this with a keyboard. You can also do it with buttons on your joystick if you wanted to, although most joysticks have a limited set of buttons. You probably don't want to use it for this. A keyboard, I think, works perfectly fine. So let's see. Let's go to keys. And what I did, I think it's down here towards the bottom. Okay. You could see that I mapped the Z key to the command XCamera MouseMove XY. So while I hold the Z key down and I move my mouse around, this is going to move the camera in a left and right direction, and I believe Y is the up and down axis, so it'll move it left and right and up and down. You can also map a key. Let's see if I can come up here a little bit and find where I did it to. Yeah, here's the X key. I tried to do the Z, X, and C, which are right next to each other. The X key I've got mapped to mouse move X and Z, and this will be left and right and forward and back on the camera. And then I think I did one other one up here, basically the C key. I can just find that real quick. Yeah, here it is, the C key. XCamera MouseMove heading and pitch, which when I hold that down, as I move the mouse around, it'll rotate the camera left and right, and it'll pitch it up and down, depending how you're doing it. So let me show you how that works, okay? We'll close this down. I'm in here. Now you can't see me doing this, but on my gaming mouse, I'm going to push one of the buttons, and I just happen to have that button mapped to one of those keystrokes that I just showed you about. So I'll push it down, and you'll see that what I can do is I can move the camera around like that. So this is basically the X and the Y axis, okay? Now press the other key here, the X key. I can move it left and right, and I can zoom in and out, right? And I can hold the C key down, and I should be able to rotate it around, rotate it up and back. So traditionally you've had to move your cameras around, you know, with the arrow keys or the dot and the comma key or whatever. This is just another way to very rapidly position your cameras, you know, for your aircraft. And I'm just going to restore these all back to where they were before, so that you know, we can do that. So that's a little bit about MouseMove. MouseMove it does have sensitivity to it. It'll depend upon the range setting that you're set to. But on these range setting things, we've tried to improve this quite a bit in XCamera. If you are in the cockpit, you're going to get a medium range setting. If it's an external camera, it'll try to set it to the larger range setting, because typically if you've got cameras outside the plane, you've got much larger distances you need to move them by. So you know, we go with a little bit of a larger range setting. And all those things can be adjusted in the settings area. I know a lot of users have kind of fought with that a little bit. We tried to make it a little bit more intuitive by picking the right range based upon the kind of camera you know, that you're using, whether it's an internal or an external camera. So I think that's about it. Kind of shows you the things that we've put into XCamera 2.0. There's actually quite a bit more than what I've just discussed, but it's pretty well detailed in the manual, and I would highly recommend that you do that. One thing I would like to remind everybody, if you are a registered 1.1 user, you do need to get a new key to work with XCamera 2.0, because the major version changed. We have to have new keys. We have tried to issue those all to you, so if you were an existing 1.1 user, you should have gotten an email from us with your new key. But there's always the possibility that it went to your junk mail folder or whatever. Again, all you have to do is go to stickandrudderstudios.com, go to the page where you register XCamera, and you can re-register again. And again, donations are entirely up to you. If you feel you'd like to donate a little bit more for 2.0 because you like the features, feel free to do that. If you feel that you don't want to donate, or you feel that the 1.1 donation you already did was good enough, all you have to really do is put $0 in the fair price field when you go to Gumroad and do the registration, and we'll send you a new key. But again, you know, if you were a 1.1 user, we should have sent one to you. Hopefully you got it. If you didn't, just re-register again, with XCamera 2.0, and you should be all set to go. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. If you like XCamera, by all means, please let people know about it. You can do that by giving us a 5-star rating in the download section in xcamera.org. If you've got suggestions for improvements, please email me at stickandrudderstudios.com. And by all means, we do encourage you to, share your aircraft files up in our community section. And again, as we build up a group of those, I'll package them up and I'll put them in the distribution. And again, thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy XCamera 2.0.